Instant email us, Dave Meltzer at EON.com.
Anyway, we have got Edge on the line. We want to get to him. How you doing today?
Not bad at all. How you doing?
I'm doing really good. This is the first time we've had you on the show, and I guess, one of the things that I had heard about you is the very beginning. You have a real interesting introduction into pro wrestling as far as the contest and everything. Could you kind of tell everyone a little bit about the background of your beginnings in wrestling?
Sure. I mean, it was one of those things, as a child, I gravitated to it. I was always into things like Kiss and comic books. So when I saw wrestling for the first time, it was like real-life superheroes. So it just seemed like a natural for me. I kept watching. I was 9 years old saying I wanted to do it. But I was 17 and still saying it when I saw a contest in the Toronto Star that said if you ever want to be a wrestler, write in an essay to the column, and the free prize was training at Sully's Gym in Toronto. So they called me up, Sully's did, once I'd entered it, and said it's down to you and a few other guys who want you to come down and see who we're going to choose to train. So they chose me, and that was the beginning of it.
And how long did you train, and how long was it before you had your first match?
Well, let's see. I started training when I was 17. I trained for a year. I had a little battle royal that I don't actually count, and that was on June 1st, 92. But I was wearing track pants and running shoes at that point. I'd been in the gym for about 2 months. So I kept training for a year. Exactly 1 year later, I had my first match, which I consider my first match. It was a handicap match. It was myself and actually, it was a tag team match, myself and El Fuego against Joey Legend and Zach Wilde, and that happened in Monarch Park in Toronto on June 1st of 93.
Now,
and the rest is history so far.
Now, explain your path in getting to the World Wrestling Federation, because, I remember you with Sexton Hardcastle, and I guess I should ask you, where did that name come from?
It's a friend of mine who's he's pretty creative, and he actually writes books and comic books and everything like that. He always would come up with characters as we were growing up when we were bored in French class, and one of his characters was Sexton Hardcastle. And we just decided that if I ever started doing this, that I would use that name. It was cool with him, and I just thought it was hilarious. So, and it incites the kind of reaction that I wanted, and I could go and act like an idiot and dance around, which is kind of a little bit of what we're doing right now.
Where did the thing about the flash photography, who came up with that?
That was one of our writers, Brian. He came up with an idea where basically we just, we've won the titles and everything goes to our head, and we just think that everyone wants to take pictures of us because of it. We don't come through the crowd because, it's just gotten out of hand, things like that. So, we'll sit down, the three of us, and a lot of times now Kurt and the four of us will just sit down and just brainstorm ideas for each city. And we try not to get pigeonholed by doing, the teams thing too much, because then when you go back to that same city, what are you going to do? So we're always trying to come up with different things. Between the three or four of us, we usually come up with some different things.
Now, with the Jay Riso Christian, you guys go back. How far do you guys go back? Because I remember like independent Christian Cage and Sexton Hardcastle, going back many years.
Yeah, well, we actually met in grade 6, and it was a funny story. He was a new kid in school. I went to Princess Elizabeth Public School. He was the new kid, and he had a ninja star, and that made him like the coolest kid. So we hooked up and started throwing his ninja star into trees, and that's how it all started.
So you and him are actually the same age?
Yeah, both 26. I'm actually exactly 1 month older than him. And we just, watch wrestling. We're diehards. And, we'd wrestle, not that I'm condoning this, but we'd wrestle in his side yard and jump off of washing machines onto mattresses and things like that. That's why I think we get along so well with the Hardys, because they were doing the same thing on a trampoline in their backyard in North Carolina while we were doing it in Canada.
Now, how old were you when you guys first started watching wrestling? Did you start very young,
Yeah, I was pretty young. I was like 8 or 9, which I guess isn't all that young. But up until that point, like I said, I was consumed with Spider-Man and Gene Simmons and Paul Stanley. So, from there, it was just, when I saw wrestling the first time, it kind of took their place.
Now, there's something I've always kind of wondered about, and that is something I noticed about a kind of a slight difference, and this is probably slightly stereotypical, okay, but still, a difference between the Canadian wrestlers and the American wrestlers, in that the Canadian wrestlers, generally speaking, and I've often attributed to the difference between Bret Hart and Hulk Hogan, that the Canadian wrestlers that have come in tend to be better technical wrestlers and more fans of the work rate aspect, whereas a lot of the American wrestlers that come in are kind of fans of, this is overly stereotypical, but a higher percentage of the American wrestlers that come in are kind of like, the bodybuilders, and they're not really, let's put it this way, not as much into the work rate. And that may have changed in recent years, but for like the generation that you came up with, that, like in that period. I mean,
well, sorry to interrupt, but I think, per capita, there's so many more wrestlers that come from the States as opposed to Canada. And I think that's why you still get your core of wrestlers from the States that are good technical wrestlers and everything, but with such a vast range of guys coming in, you're always going to have your posers or bodybuilders that aren't real concerned about the work rate. I think what a lot of the Canadian wrestlers with our work rate has to do with Stampede Wrestling. And I think that's really influenced a lot of it influenced me. I grew up watching Chris Benoit, Owen Hart, Brian Pillman, Bret Hart, Dynamite Kid, guys like that who, enough said, their work rate is top notch. I know that's what Christian and I watched. We also watched WWF, but because of watching Stampede, the guys I watched were Ricky Steamboat and Randy Savage and Dynamite and Bret when they got there. And I think also a lot of us, as you can probably see, were highly influenced by Shawn Michaels, because coming up at that time as you're wanting to get into the business, he was the man, and probably arguably the best ever. So I think in between Stampede and Michaels, he's probably influenced a lot of the Canadian guys the most. But it does seem like with the small handful, I guess not that small, but the handful of guys that come from Canada, it seems like the work rate's pretty high. I think that's a good compliment.
Yeah. No, you okay? So you started out in Toronto.
Mm-hmm.
At that point, I mean, were you someone who came in there and once you started out, it's like this is how I'm going to make my living and I'm going to make it and I'm going to go, because you traveled a lot more than most independent guys at that time period did. I don't know if it's to get noticed or just to get matches, or I'm not sure, but I just saw your name around in a lot of places.
Well, it was a little bit of both. We do it to get noticed and get experience. We went wherever we could. One tour, we called it a tour from hell. We went down to Tennessee for a month, and Jay was told that we had 18 bookings. It ended up being 3. We wrestled in a barn in Fall Branch, Tennessee, in front of 6 people, and just got dates where we could, and it was just one of those things because we knew what we wanted, and we knew in order to get it we had to do this. I always said to myself that I never had a doubt that I would make it. Not to sound egotistical or cocky, but I think if you have that doubt, then you won't. I had sat down and had a conversation with a friend of mine when we were both, trying to break in, and he said he didn't have that same confidence, and to this point he hasn't been hired, and I think that has a lot to do with it. You need to have that confidence in yourself in order for someone like Vince McMahon to have that confidence to put you on TV.
Now, how was working with Dory Funk Jr.? Because I guess you worked with him a lot before starting with the WWF.
Yeah, at the first Funking Dojo. Dory was the trainer, and a year before, actually, I had sent Dory a tape. I was in 2 teams at the time. I was teaming with Jay a lot, and I was teaming with Joe as Second Violence. And I had heard they needed teams for a tournament in All Japan. So I thought, well, why not? I sent Dory a tape, and he said he liked it. So we had talked on and off that year, and then I found out that he was going to be the trainer of that first camp. And so I was really looking forward to it, and it was great. It was a lot of fun. I look back on all the people that I've learned from, and I was trained by Ron Hutchison and Sweet Daddy Siki. And then from there, I worked with Bret a little bit out in Calgary, and then from there, Dory Funk. So, I mean, the list of guys who helped me get to where I am is a really good list, and I look back and I'm thankful for it.
This first question here is from Ryan Anderson, who says, what would you rate as your best singles match and your best tag team match so far in the WWF?
Oh, yikes. Best singles match. I had a few with Jeff Jarrett that I really enjoyed. I think a fully loaded pay-per-view where I dropped the IC title to him was fun. I've had some with D'Lo that I've enjoyed. Yikes. I don't know. Some with Jeff Hardy I've enjoyed. It's tough to really just narrow down one. Tag team I can kind of narrow down just because of so many of them since I've been there. We had one against Val Venus and D'Lo that was on Sunday Night Heat that I really enjoyed, and I think the one that everyone always wants to mention, which is probably my favorite, is the tag team ladder match at No Mercy.
Yeah, and that's the one that everyone remembers, I think. If you have to pick one match of Edge and Christian, that's the one that pops into everyone's mind.
Yeah.
Let's start hitting the phone calls. We'll go to Masada in Pennsylvania. You're first up with Edge.
Hi, guys. Hey, Dave, Edge, and Brian. How are you?
Fine. Good.
How you doing?
I'll ask Dave a question first. One of you guys, did you notice Jim Ross making the comment? Pat Patterson came out on Monday. He said, here comes Pat Patterson, and he went to Tony Awards with Nathan Lane, who I guess is supposed to be homosexual.
What exactly did he say?
He said Pat Patterson just went to the Tony Awards with Nathan Lane.
Okay, yeah. I forget who, but I actually remember the comment, and I didn't even know the person who was saying it about, but I figured that's kind of, you know what the Pat Patterson jokes always are, so,
Yeah, but is there any legitimate heat between those two guys, or is it just like kind of ribbing?
I think it's more ribbing only because every commentator that the WF has had, with the exception of when Vince, because Vince always played straight man, always made, Pat Patterson jokes. I mean, you can go back to Jesse Ventura and all of them. It was just, it was kind of like an inside rib type of thing. I don't know that there's not heat, but I don't know. I mean, it's just one of those things. I think it's part of WF culture is that the commentators make fun of Patterson in those situations.
And the guy doesn't mind? Patterson?
I don't know. I don't know him well enough to know if he minds or not. I mean, it's just something that's always been done. I don't know. I don't know if what Howard Finkel used to think when they used to always kind of use him as the butt of jokes either. It's just something that they do, I really don't know the answer as to if he minds or not, though.
After the broom spot, I don't think he
could. Anything else, Assad?
Yeah, my question for Edge was, has WWF ever talked to you about a singles push without the tag team?
Well, I mean, it's been thrown around off and on all the time, but things change minute to minute with the current state of wrestling. You always have to keep people interested. When that happens, everything changes a lot. So there's been times where, a single push is coming and then it just ends up being a tag team thing again, which is fine by me. I've kind of looked at it like the way Brett and Shawn had their careers. And if I could try and forge the same thing, I think that'd be a really cool thing. They weren't rushed into anything. They weren't pushed into anything. It just happened. And I'd like to think maybe that's the same path I'm on.
Your last Owen Hart's last match was with you, right?
Yeah, in Chicago. It was Chris and myself against Owen and Jeff at the Rosemont Horizon.
Oh, wow. Was it the night before the pay-per-view or the week before?
Yeah, it was the night before.
Wow, I didn't even know that. Wow.
Yeah.
Anything about that, Masad, or just wanted to ask him if that was the truth?
Yeah, just wanted to know if that was true.
Okay,
I'll hang up now. All right, bye-bye.
Okay, thanks a bunch. Okay, let's go to Kevin in Seattle. Kevin, you're next up.
Hey, Dave. Hi, Brett. How you doing?
Hey.
Doing good.
Hey, Edge, first of all, I want to say, as a fellow Torontonian, that you're my favorite wrestler. And
thank you.
Congratulations on everything that you've achieved so far in the WWF.
Oh, thank you very much.
And I saw your match I was at WrestleMania, and I must say the triple threat ladder match stole the show. Other than that, I just want to ask, what happened to the angle between you and Val Venus, and was that supposed to be a work or shoot angle between you and your wife or Val Venus's sister?
It was one of those things. It was basically the beginning of a start of an angle. We had that match for the European title, but in that match against me, Val sprained his neck. And that put him on the shelf. He tried to come back 2 weeks later, but, like I was telling him, it takes at least a month of doing absolutely nothing to heal a sprained neck. So hop back in the ring, it just wasn't a good idea, and it wasn't because I put him on the shelf for about another month. At that point, things totally changed. Christian and I went off and started, going into this thing with the Dudleys, and at that point it had such good momentum with the whole triangle thing that was building up to Mania that it wasn't a good idea to stop it, to go back into something that had happened, almost 2 months prior. So that's why that got shelved, and now we've kind of just gone our own separate paths and are doing our own thing. And I'm engaged to Val's sister, so it seemed like a natural.
Are you ever opposed to having her being part of WWF Angles or part of TV or anything like that?
Yes and no. I think if it were to happen, I'd rather it be Alana just because I wouldn't feel comfortable doing that with someone else. But at the same time, I wouldn't want her, exposed to what we go through night in and night out because it's hectic and it takes a toll. Maybe if it were short, if it were just for the one storyline, but then you see how popular some of the girls become, and you wonder if it would actually be that way. So, I don't know. It's a double-sided coin, I guess.
Okay, well, I got one more question for you. I was wondering, obviously you, Christian, Chris Jericho, and Chris Benoit are, I guess you would say, on the bottom level of the top tier right now, working your way up. Who do you see in the next group of people coming up to the main event status, so to say?
Let's see. Well, I would have to throw Kurt Angle in that group. Kurt's one of those guys. He's only been wrestling altogether for, I think, about a year. And to me, he seems like a natural. He's really picking it up. And from teaming with us, he's like a sponge. Not that we're teachers or anything, but we have more experience. And he definitely listens, which is good. And he already has natural instincts on knowing what to do, having to be told. So I would say Kurt. I would say Chris Jericho. I would say Chris Benoit. I'd like to think we are. I don't know. It's always hard for a tag team to crack that top tier. So it may be one of those things where we have to break up and do a program against each other for us to be able to crack into that. But, who knows?
Well, I see you guys as being in that top tier already, and I just want to say continued success in WWF, and good luck with everything else.
Great. Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right. Thanks a lot, Edge.
Okay, thanks a bunch. I want to ask you, are you living in Toronto, or did you move from Toronto?
Actually moved from Toronto. Right now I'm in Toronto, though. I'm in my truck in Toronto, but we moved down to the Bahamas, and that was strictly because of the taxes here in Canada. When you fall in the highest tax bracket, the taxes are 48%. So that just seemed like a lot to me, and I decided, well, Alana and I will move down there and give it a shot. So we moved down for a year, and we've decided that it's not for us, and we're going to be moving again. So it was worth a shot, and we can say we lived on Paradise Island for a year.
Are you going to move to the United States, or are you going to go back to Toronto?
Going to move to the States. I'm going to buy a house in Tampa, and eventually I definitely want to buy another house in Toronto because it is home, and both of our families are all still up here. So that'll be where I come to in the summers. But during the winters, I'm thinking Florida's a lot better.
Have you before you went to the WWF, was there ever like a situation where, did you had contact with, say, whether it be WCW or ECW or someone along the way, and was it something where you always wanted to get in with the WWF, or was there? Well, you had actually mentioned you were considering you tried to get into All Japan at one point. How did your pre-WWF career? Who did you meet and not meet, and were there any near misses, I guess?
Actually, no. Believe it or not, the one place I always wanted to go was WWF because that's what we watched in Canada. We actually didn't get NWA at all. There was one show called Pro Wrestling Plus that showed little capsules of everything, so I'd see 30 seconds of Ric Flair. So to me, that was all foreign territory, so I was always geared toward WWF. Believe me, if the opportunity had to come, I would have gone to either ECW or WCW. But, wrestling where we did, everyone was in the same boat as us. There was never really any names on the show that were there or were still there kind of thing. There were always, journeymen at that point. We'd do shows, guys like Butch Reed and Greg Valentine, but they had already spent their time there and were done. So an opportunity never really came. The first opportunity was the one I jumped on.
And what was that like? Who did you meet, and who found you?
It was actually, I was wrestling an independent show in Ajax, Ontario, and a fellow by the name of Carl DeMarco, who's now the Canadian president, was in the crowd that day. He was friends with Brett and said, you got something there. I'll give a tape to Brett. And eventually Carl ended up getting the Canadian presidency job, like I mentioned. When Brett went down with a knee injury, well, even before that, Carl called me one day and said they needed to work some Bob Holly in Cops Coliseum. Would I like to do it? And I said, you better believe I would. So I drove down to Hamilton and I worked Bob, and I was really happy with the match, and so were the agents. At that time I was 22, so we kept in contact, and that was that. Finally, Brett went down with his knee injury. Carl said I should head out there. I went out, I talked to Brett. I went out there without a penny in my pocket, and Brett said, we got to get you signed. So that was the start of my WWF career.
What were your feelings as far as the Bret Hart departure? Being he was one of the guys who got you in.
Yeah, it was really strange because my first dark match was the day after.
Oh, Ottawa.
Yeah, so it was. I had no clue what to think. I was just, I had no clue if that would affect me or what would happen, and it didn't. But and it was the place I always wanted to go, and I think it was a really strange time, and. So it was one of those things, at that point, I was just sitting there and, saying hi when spoken to. Other than that, I'd just go off in a corner and do my own thing, be respectful to everyone, and that was pretty much it. So I just tried to be quiet and roll with everything.
That must have been a real weird dressing room that one day, because, I just remember that 24-hour period after the Montreal match, and just talking to several people in the company and things like that with various viewpoints, all kinds of different viewpoints on what happened. But it was just, it was like a weird powder keg that didn't explode. It almost seemed like. Certain times there were some very vehement people that night that, eventually everyone simmered down, and the company actually went through the roof afterwards. But it was that one day must have been very, very unique first day, I guess, in the dressing room.
Well, it was a pretty strange first day, but at the same time, no one knew who I was. So they wouldn't convey their feelings to me. So I just kind of, I was on the fringes that day and just, went about my thing. And I think that day I worked Glenn Kulka in a dark match, and then the next day I worked Jay in a dark match in Cornwall. So, and then from there just went back and sat around and waited for them to come up with something. So I was at home for the majority of the aftermath besides those 2 days. So I didn't get get the full aspect of it, but I was there, and it was different.
So now with Jay, did you guys basically were you brought in together, or did you get in first and help him along, or how did that all kind of break down?
I had actually I was already signed and gotten the first invite to the first Funking Dojo. At that point, Jay wasn't signed or anything. So we went to Japan a couple of times. We came back. I did the first camp, and finally, when my character started rolling a little bit, I said, I have this partner. If you're doing more camps, maybe you'd like to take a look at him. Finally, they said, yeah, okay. And so, I've always said if I open the door a crack, he kicked it open for himself, and went down and did a camp, and they were impressed, and he was signed from there and brought in as my little brother.
Let's go to Derek in New Jersey. Derek, you're next up with Edge.
Hey, what's up, guys?
How's it going?
Too much.
Edge, I've been thinking about this. What was better, winning the tag titles at WrestleMania or winning the IC title in Canada?
I have to be honest with you. I think the IC, because it was the belt that I always really watched. Those were the matches I really watched growing up. Steamboat Savage, Kurt Hennig, Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels. They all kind of that was their springboard to the top. Plus, to do it in front of all my family, all my friends, in a building that I went to WrestleMania 6 at, that was a pretty special feeling. That was still my favorite night in this business for me. I still get goosebumps when I think about it. But at the same time, Christian and I always said that one day we'd win those tag team titles standing there in a side yard wrestling. So they were both real special, and to do it at a WrestleMania was even cooler. So it's real close, but I think I got to go with the IC title because it's my hometown.
Who came up with the idea of you winning the title at a house show?
Pretty strange story. It was supposed to be Jeff Jarrett and Ken Shamrock, and Ken got stuck in Detroit. I had wrestled in the opening match with Christian against the Acolytes. I got back and they said, well, you're probably going to have to wrestle Jeff because I was wrestling him the next day. They said it'd be a non-title match and that we'd do a deal where I went over, but it wasn't, title match, so therefore there was, the title wouldn't change hands. They, as we were in the ring and I was holding the belt up, gave it back to referee Earl Hudner, and Jack Lanza came out and said, what are you guys doing in the pay-per-view tomorrow? And Jeff said he was going over. So he said, go get your belt, champ. And I went, what? And there's actually a tape of it that I have at home, and you can hear me saying, what? Are you serious? Went in, grabbed the belt, and that was that.
So that would mean...
Yeah, it blew my mind.
So that would result in a shoot comment you said on Slam Wrestling?
I'm sorry, I missed that part.
When you were interviewed by Slam Wrestling, you said it was a complete shoot?
Well, it was something I guess you didn't know about it ahead of time.
No, I had no clue. I was completely shocked, and there was a picture in the Toronto Sun the next day where I'm in disbelief because I was. And but it was fun, and none of my family expected it or anything, so everyone was just as shocked as I was. They thought I was holding out on them, but I wasn't.
Wow.
That's pretty cool story.
That is a really cool story.
I finally have a question. I just thought about it during the break.
Okay.
You used to work for Tim Flowers, right?
Yeah, quite a bit actually out in Winnipeg.
How'd that go?
Oh, it was great. Tim's definitely a character. One of those guys that you can't help but learn from. He's a veteran and everything he does looks sharp. I mean, it looks crisp. It looks solid. A lot, kind of like a Fit Finley. We actually did an angle, myself and Chi Cruz were a tag team out in Winnipeg, which was great territory when you look back at the roster. And to see it now where all those guys have gone, it's incredible. But against my old partner Joe and Tim, and it was good stuff. It was a lot of fun.
This is an interesting question. I never heard this before. Wow, this says, is it true that when Vince Russo was in the WWF, he wanted Edge to do a deaf-mute angle?
I had heard rumors. I don't know how true it was, but I had heard rumors about it, and people still come up to me to this day and say, "Glad you're on a deaf mute." So I don't know whose idea or what, or if it was even true, but I heard the rumblings and I just gulped. I was like, "Oh God, no."
That's when you think about getting noticed or something.
Yeah, really.
They gave it to Kane.
This is from Steve Gerwick, which has nothing to do with Edge, but it does have something to do with what we talked about earlier. And he says that my full-time job is a school teacher like Bruce Mitchell. On a daily basis, I come in contact with kids ages 5 to 14, so kindergarten through 8th grade. The hot move right now with the younger kids is the worm. The most second and third graders that I talk with believe that they can do the worm and often attempt it. Children with better memories, the middle graders in particular, still like the stunner. So that's the older kids that grew up with it. Also popular right now are the pedigree, the rock bottom, the people's elbow. I knew the people's elbow. And the choke slam. He goes, I come in direct contact with 450 kids, and in my 6 years of teaching, I have never seen one kid attempt a WCW move. That's the scariest thing I've ever heard. In fact, kids rarely talk about WCW. It's considered boring, consisting of old guys that the kids don't care about, Flair, Hogan, Page, etc. Now, I was always told, because, my girlfriend's younger brother is a super big wrestling fan, and he's 12 years old, and he has talked about WCW. In fact, at one point he was a real big WCW fan, but the one that he would talk about was the Diamond Cutter when Page was really hot, which used to always kind of surprise me. But
can you mention
I think
any pedigree on their friend?
I guess they're doing pedigrees. I remember him telling me once. This is when I got really scared. He came by for a weekend, and we were just talking about wrestling, and he just goes, "Oh yeah, we had a kid, who got all bloody at school today." And he goes, "What happened?" In recess, they DDT'd him on a tree stump. It's like, oh god.
Man,
Oh, that's so bad.
I mean, you know what though? It's going to happen. I mean, we were doing it when we were kids too. It's just whether it's any kind of physicality. I mean, kids will run around and say, I mean, when I was growing up, Ninja Turtles, or G-Force. Yeah, that's really old, but. Yeah, and nowadays kids will say Pokemon, whatever, or wrestling. It's always going to happen. Kids always wrestle around. A lot of the times wrestling gets the blame for it, and I don't think it's always fair. You know, kids will wrestle. But back to the signature moves, I think it's just because the WWF does such a good job of making sure that the name of a move gets over. Really, in the WCW, the only one I can think of is, like you said, a Diamond Cutter or Hogan's Leg Drop or the Stinger Splash.
Spear Jackhammer with Goldberg.
Oh, okay, yeah.
That one really good. Yeah.
Yeah, that's another one. And but I mean, a lot of them, any moves that are now happening in WCW were coined in the WWF. So it's I don't know. And when I think of Scott Hall, I still think of the Razor's Edge.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't know. Maybe it's just the way different company or different announcers, promote the moves. I don't know.
I've always that's what's interesting you bring that up, because years ago, when a lot of the new moves were being introduced from Mexico and Japan, and wrestling was really starting to change in the United States based on younger wrestlers watching the videos from the other countries, and guys would be doing new moves, and the announcers would have no idea what it was, and they would never say anything. And I would go, I would always be on the announcer's case, and all of them. And Ross finally caught on, and Joey Styles actually caught on before Ross. He was the first one, and then Ross caught on. And then the guys in WCW, Mike Tenay did, but the other ones, almost had a mindset that we're not going to learn any new moves because we know wrestling, and all these moves should go away. And I would always say that, then people go, well, what does it matter what the name of the move is if they call it right? And I would always say, it doesn't matter what you call the move, but what matters is you call it consistently by the same name over and over again, because then people react to it. A guy can do this spectacular move, and if it's not a move people are primed for, the reaction will not be nearly as good as a more simple move that people are primed for because it's been drummed into their head.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the people's elbow is a good example of that. Probably the most simple move in anyone's repertoire. It's an elbow drop, but because it's been programmed in, look at how over it is, And I remember guys doing helos or everything was a moonsault for a long time in the States. Any kind of flipping move or any kind of intricate move somehow ended up being a moonsault. I remember that era for a little while.
Yeah.
So,
what are your thoughts as far as, you were in that match at the match at WrestleMania, and of course the other ladder match, where Jeff Hardy did the one with that senton or swanton off the top of the ladder, and some really, really crazy stuff. I mean, sometimes, when I watch those matches, in fact, the WrestleMania match came to my mind. It's a great match, but I get scared because it's at what risk, at what point does the risk become too dangerous?
Yeah, where do you draw the line?
Where do you draw the line, exactly?
Well, I think that's a danger that we've kind of fallen into, where now if we were to do another one, then what do we do? Do you get instead of a 15-foot ladder, do you get a 25-foot ladder, and so on and so on? And I don't know, any risks I take are calculated, because I want longevity. And I was watching Jeff as he was going up. I was on the outside, and I was like, "Oh, be okay, be safe, Jeff. Be safe, be safe." And didn't find out until later that he was okay. He banged up his heels pretty good, but other than that, he could walk. So I don't know. It's one of those things where you do have to draw the line somewhere, because if you don't do that again, then the fans won't be appeased. And then they'll say, oh, well, that wasn't as good. And you always want to live up to the billing, number one, and live up to your matches before. So you have to be careful you don't pigeonhole yourself into being this daredevil that people expect to see those things all the time. And I think maybe a good example is a guy like Sabu. I've never actually met him, but just from seeing, maybe he's just a hell of a seller, but he looks like he's in pain. And I think, he's known as the suicidal, homicidal, I don't know the whole phrase, but, from doing moves like that, and that's what got him over. But at the same time, you have to wonder if at some point he should have drawn the line. And I think that's sometimes about Jeff. Matt kind of got on to it a little bit. You still give the people what they want, but you still got to be careful.
Yeah, because I just like sometimes you watch the stuff and you worry about if it takes this much to move move the fans and they start expecting it. I mean, I just give an example is the other night Ric Flair and Vince Russo were brawling on the top of the cage similar to the Hell in the Cell on Nitro. And a lot of people were going they were disappointed because Vince Russo, who's not even a trained wrestler, didn't take a bump like Foley did, or Vince McMahon sort of did, because Vince was almost at the top of a similar cage. And I was just thinking, a super trained bump taker, I would hate to see do it, but I mean, I guess if it's it's been done, but it's like it's something like people were actually expecting once he got up there he was going to take a bump off the cage because they have actually seen people do that.
Yeah.
I felt bad
and the thing is,
like
super trained
hanging
bump
from the top
taker would hurt
into
himself.
the ring, and the cameras missed it.
Yeah, that was a lot. And falling into the ring was okay.
Yeah.
Okay, let Edge. What did you just say?
Well, I mean, a super trained bump taker would hurt himself no matter what people say about wrestling. You take that kind of fall, it hurts, whether you've been doing it for 10 years, whether you've been doing it for 2 months. So someone who knows what they're doing will still, jar themselves. Vince Russo would have killed himself. And I think, that's kind of a precedent that's been set now. And anytime you do a match like that, you're almost pigeonholed to try and to top that. And that makes it really tough.
Physically. This is from Kathy, who says, I have a question for Edge. He goes, I live in the Maritimes, and I was wondering how you enjoyed your time in Grand Prix Wrestling.
Actually, you know what? I had a really good time. It was a good experience, and didn't make much money, but I didn't expect to. So it was a good time. I wrestled Bad News Brown in the main event every night for the first month, and then the second month I wrestled Rick Martel and Don Callis in tag team matches with Christian. So it was a really good time, and we lived in Moncton in a little apartment just off the university. Had a great time and a lot of fun.
Did you talk a lot to Bad News Allen, or when you were working out there with him?
Oh, yeah. Bad News, we've done a lot of tours together, whether it was Winnipeg or Bad News actually got Christian and I to Japan. So he's done a lot for us, and we've learned a lot from him. He's a great guy.
We had him as a guest on the show. His stories were phenomenal.
Oh, he has got so many awesome stories. We've done like 12-hour drives, and he has just, talked the whole time with his stories.
Yeah.
Great stuff. Really good stuff. Interesting stuff.
Let's get back to the phone calls. We'll go to Casey in Tennessee. Casey, you're up with Edge.
Hi, Edge.
Hi.
Hey.
I have 2 questions for you.
Okay.
What would you be if you were not a wrestler right now?
I'm sorry, I can't hear you, Casey.
What would you be if you weren't a wrestler right now?
Can you repeat that one for me, Dave?
Yeah. She goes, what would you be if you were not a pro wrestler?
What would I be? Yikes. That's a scary thought because this is all I ever wanted to do. I've always wanted to entertain, and I don't know if I was meant to or what, but I've always pictured myself in front of a group of people doing something. To me, wrestling was what I wanted to do because it was physical. It was in front of people. If I wasn't doing that, geez, I don't know. I've had a little bit of fun with acting. It's a little bit more tedious and monotonous than I thought it was going to be, but that's fun. Maybe hockey I would have gone after. Being Canadian, that's what we're all born and bred on. But that's tough. And I went to college for radio broadcasting, so that might have been, I might have dipped into that. Who knows? I'm glad I don't have to know.
My next question is, when do you plan on getting married?
We haven't set a date yet, actually. We just we closed on our first house in Tampa. We move into that June 30th, and then from there we're going to set a date. We're not in a huge rush. We kind of want to get all of our furniture and everything moved in, get those headaches out of the way, and then we'll set a date and try and get all of that ironed out. So I would imagine sometime next year, though.
Oh, can you do me a favor?
I'm sorry?
Can you do me a favor?
Am I what?
Depends on what the favor is.
My friend, Ashley, is sitting right next to me, and she's crying. She is your number 1 fan, and I was wondering if you could say hi to her.
Sure.
Get her on the phone.
Hold on.
That wasn't too bad. I'm always afraid when they ask if you'll do a favor and you don't know what the favor is. It's
it's like, uh-oh, what I got myself into.
Hello?
Yeah.
Hello?
Go.
Hello?
Hello?
Hi, how are you?
Oh, my God. Oh, my God. Oh, my God. Oh, my God.
See, before if I do this and I said hello, no one recognized my voice because I never talk. So now I guess that's a good thing. They recognize my voice. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
I'm good. I'm sitting on a gas station waiting for a receipt. That's what all the noise is about. I've just been filling my truck up with gas. So there we go. Back in the truck.
Any questions, Ashley?
Yeah. Ed, when are you going to come do an autograph session in Nashville?
In Nashville?
Yeah.
It's not really up to me. I just kind of go where they send me. I don't know. Call WWF and say you want us in Nashville. Generally, I just get my booking sheets and wherever we have autograph sessions, I show up.
Okay. Well, I think I might do that.
Okay.
Oh, God. Thank you so much for talking to me.
You're welcome. You have a nice night, okay?
Bye.
Bye-bye.
I think we've ever had a call like that.
We have never had a call like that, ever. We have never had an orgasmic reaction on the phone in the history of this show.
It's weird. My mom ends up getting all my letters. So when I come up to Toronto, I have like a whole bunch of letters to go through, and it's pretty much the same theme throughout all of them. A lot of teenage girls and a lot of oh my gods and things like that, which is flattering. But one thing that I didn't honestly really expect, but at the same time, when I first came in, I didn't know what to expect. I never thought I could be a face in the climate of today's wrestling, and when it ended up that it seemed like I was getting face reactions, I was surprised, and then the whole Brood thing, and then the Brood became faces, and I didn't think I'd become a heel after a while. Then the guys kind of started turning on us, and I kind of realized that with all the teenage girls writing, maybe that was why.
You know, it's real interesting though. Even now, when you guys come out and you're doing the total heel character, the initial response is that scream that I mean, I haven't heard a lot of that in wrestling. The Hardys are getting it too, but I remember like the Von Erichs used to get that initial scream at the matches when they would first when they'd first walk through the curtain or whatever.
Well, it's strange, and like I said, it's flattering. I think it's just the hair, to be honest. You cut off our hair, and then I don't think those screams will happen. But I don't know. It's weird too. Now that we're doing this character, I notice guys our age are now on our side, whereas before they hated us. I mean, not all of them. Now there's a lot of them that have pretty degrading signs, but a lot of them now. Before would have been, hating us, but now they get a kick out of what we're doing. They're laughing. They're, having fun, which, I mean, as long as they're reacting one way or the other, I guess that's all that matters, are being entertained. But I think right now our whole objective is to get people annoyed with us, and I think we're doing a pretty good job.
This is from Adam, who says, you seem to be very natural and confident as a heel. Do you enjoy being a heel over a face? And do you have any inspirations as far as your heel character? Like, were there any heels that you watched tapes of that you kind of, like, picked up a lot from?
To answer the first one, being a heel is a lot more fun, just because I've always found it's a lot easier to get people to hate you than like you. With that being said, being a babyface is fun, too. Yeah, a lot of fun, actually. You know what? Either or, but I have to admit being heel is a little bit more fun because right now I'm being Adam Copeland a lot more than the original Edge, the mysterious enigma. That wasn't me, and I didn't know how to treat that character, and I think it showed. The Brood, a little bit more of Adam came out and was a little bit more successful, and now this is a lot more like me. So I'm having a lot more fun with it, to be honest. And I always wanted the opportunity to cut promos and speak and show that I could do it, and or both of us could do it, and so we're having a lot more fun now, I'd have to admit. Yeah, heels, yikes. Shawn Michaels, I always watched Shawn, and when I really started to get into Shawn, I mean, I was a big Rockers fan, but when he turned heel, I was like, yeah, this guy he's the next guy. And I'd like to think we kind of put a little bit more of maybe an intelligent twist on being a heel than most guys do. Maybe we don't, I don't know. We try and do it where we're talking down our noses at people, as opposed to saying, we're going to kick your stinking butt, things like that. So, yeah, I don't know, but I guess Shawn Michaels would be the big one.
Okay, guys, now it's time for WWF Daily Trivia. So here's today's question. What city was the first ever Hulk Hogan versus Ric Flair match held in? And I will tell you that I won't tell you where it's not. Well, it wasn't Madison Square Garden, so I guess I could tell you that's where it certainly wasn't. We are back here with Edge, and of course we have Brian Alvarez of Figure 4 Weekly here as well. We've got a ton of emails and a couple of calls. Let's get to Chris in Detroit. Chris, you're next up with Edge.
Hey, what's up, Edge? Chris.
How you doing, Chris?
Brian. I just got a question. I'm kind of go back a few years with you, Edge. I used to go to some of the shows locally here in the Michigan, Detroit area, and I just was wondering, what was some of your opinions of it, and what were some of your favorite angles or moments from working here in Detroit?
Actually, I always like going back to Detroit, too, because I see the same little group full of fans that were there at a lot of my indie dates. So it's kind of cool. It almost feels, I've always said that Toronto, in a way, Hamilton, because it was my first match in Detroit, feel like three hometowns. So I always enjoy going back to Detroit, like I said. But let's see. I enjoyed Thug Life a lot. You know, that little group that we had,
yep,
and that was a lot of fun. And really strange thing, too, is we had started doing that Canadian thing 2 weeks before those guys started doing it in the WWF. And I know they didn't, you know, bite the idea or anything. It just happened at the same time. But we were like, oh, man. You know, so that was a lot of fun, the whole Canada US thing that we did, and having Rhino and Joe, myself, Christian. It was fun.
Wasn't there, like, a point where, like, Joe, like, they did an angle or something where Joey was pissed at you because you chose Christian over him, and he was looking for a partner or something?
Yeah, they did the whole deal where they were both arguing over my services, I guess, as a tag team partner. And, you know, they fought, and then Joe and I fought, and it was worked each other. It was a lot of fun. You know, but that was after a little while, after we wreaked havoc over the couple of companies there for a little while.
Right. Okay, and one other question I have for you. Do you have any more, you said you mentioned you wrestled in Japan. Do you have any more aspirations of ever going back? Because, I mean, I think, like especially with the roster you guys have now, if you guys could ever hook up something with, like, an All Japan or whatever, where you guys could, like, take on guys like Misawa, Kawada, Kobashi, and Akiyama, I think that, like, right now with the WWF wrestlers that you guys have, with being able to work the style and everything, that you guys would be able to pull it off now compared to 5 years ago when you had the big, you know, oaf lumping around.
Yeah, well, it'd definitely be a lot of fun. I mean, just from wrestling guys that style, like Johnny Smith. I've wrestled Johnny Smith before, who's, you know, All Japan through and through, and I loved wrestling him. His style is just really cool and crisp, and it was a lot of fun. You know, wrestling, I haven't got to wrestle Ben yet, which I'm totally looking forward to, but Chris Jericho and I have, you know, worked each other a few times, and just that whole Japanese style, it's nice, it's stiff, it's snug. A lot of the Canadian guys work that way, too. Mind you, a lot of Americans do too. So, but it's a lot of fun. I think I'd definitely like to go back to Japan someday. Whether, you know, it was with the WWF or not, who knows what the future holds. But I'd like to go back again. Although I hate the food, and I lost, you know, like 9 pounds in 9 days the last time I was there. But you know, other than that, you know, I'd like to do it again. Yeah,
okay, the crowd over there. My last question is there anybody, is anybody in your guys', you know, locker room, does anybody ever watch tapes of Japan or anything? I always just wonder that, because sometimes I watch Venus, and I see him doing some of, like, Akiyama stuff, because they'll do, like, that Blue Thunder where he'll get the guy in the German suplex and turn it around into a power bomb, and he also, like, sometimes they'll pull out the exploder as well. And I just wondered, like, if he ever, like, you know, if some of you guys ever, like, grab some of the stuff that you see over there.
Well, Val's a big All Japan fan, and he did some tours for them before. So he likes to try and incorporate some of that stuff into his style. Generally, I know from my own experience, I actually don't have any Japanese wrestling tapes. I always want to get my hands on some, but it just ends up that it doesn't seem like you have any time. We're on the road so much that we don't get an opportunity to see any tapes. The only stuff you get to see is our shows or WCW. When I'm at home, I'm still always thinking spots and everything, but I'll go back to my library of Brett and Sean and Ted DiBiase and Bob Orton and guys like that, take what they've done, put my own little twist on it and tweak it up a little bit and try and make it a little bit different. Japanese-wise, I don't really, like I said, have anything in my catalog, but I'd like to one day just to take what they've done and make it a little bit more of my own as opposed to theirs.
Okay, hey, thanks a lot, guys, and keep up the great work, Dave, on the show. I enjoy it a lot.
Okay, thanks a bunch, Chris. Let's go to Josh in Tennessee. Josh, you're next up.
Hey, guys. How you doing?
Hey, Josh.
I was just wanted to say, first off, to Edge, I'm a big fan, really liking what you guys are doing with the new direction for the characters. I was wondering if there's any plans in place for maybe a name for the tag team for you and Christian. If y'all thought about any names, like lots of times you hear or two is Maple Leaf Blondes, Suicide Blondes, things like that.
Yeah, well, at first, I think it's a little too late now.
Yeah.
Almost to come up with a tag team name. And, you know, we did the Suicide Blondes thing, but, you know, I don't think I'd like that in the WWF. I don't think it would fit. We were trying to think of a name, and that just kind of stuck. And at that point, we were doing basically what we're doing now. But when we first started teaming, we were still, you know, the two mysterious guys that came through the crowd. So to come up with the tag team name, you know, the Brood would have worked. But it wouldn't work now. So I think we're probably, you know, I always just call it ENC. It just seems easier. I don't know. But I think that to change it now, it wouldn't really work. And I've always liked the fact that we still have two separate identities that way.
Right.
Once you get, it's almost like you get pigeonholed when you get a tag team name. It's like, oh, that's that guy from the Brainbusters or something like that. As opposed to Arn Anderson came out of it, but for a while he was probably Arn Anderson, that guy in the Brainbusters.
Exactly. That's a good point. You'll always hear like Smash referred to as Demolition Smash or Demolition Smash.
Yeah, and that's one thing I've always enjoyed, that we're just, he's Christian, I'm Edge.
Right, well, that's a good point. The other thing I wanted to know is you guys have been teaming with Kurt Angle a lot, which has been great, made for some really not only good matches, but some hilarious TV. Are y'all interested in maybe staying with him? Is there a stable maybe forming, or is that possible?
I'm sorry, I missed that last part.
Would y'all continue teaming with Kurt? Could y'all possibly be forming a stable, maybe adding some more guys to it, or is it just you three right now?
The thing with Kurt, it just seems like a natural. We all kind of, the three of us do the same kind of thing. I've always kind of looked at it like we're a tag team version of Kurt Angle, and he's a singles version of Edge and Christian. Not appearance-wise, not wrestling-wise, but just attitude-wise. And even in the back, I mean, the three of us are all, you know, basically best friends. So it just seemed like a natural. We all operate the same way, and it's entertaining. We're having fun. When you see us out there, if we're laughing because we're having a really good time, and we're having a good time, you know, pissing people off.
Yeah, well, I know the fans are enjoying it. I just wanted to say, been a big fan of yours for a while, and it's good to see you finally getting the character development I think you needed, and
oh, thank you, I appreciate it.
Doing a great job on the mic. So keep up the good work. Looking forward to seeing you in the years to come. Thanks a lot, guys.
Okay. You ever had a problem coming through the crowd?
Sometimes, not anything real threatening or anything like that, but, you know, you have tough guys that as you're walking downstairs with sunglasses on, there's no lights on, that try and push you. You know, you have, well, like I said before, teenage girls that kind of try and tear at your coat and stuff, or, you know, I've lost some hair, but other than that, it's not been too bad. My debut on heat, I guess, I think it was the first heat ever, was against Jeff Jarrett in Anaheim. And I was going through the crowd. I thought I was cutting right to go through a path, but it was a bunch of chairs, and I knocked over like 4 girls, landed on top of them. You know, I disappeared for 4 seconds on TV. And
that's just too good.
Yeah, and I knew what was going on. I don't think anyone else did, hopefully. But just totally bowled them over. And, you know, I don't think they were too upset about it, but it was embarrassing. So I got up and went in and did the match. But, you know, little things like that. And I remember one time in Chicago, some guy, you know, jumped in front of me, and I had to shove him out of my way, and it got picked up on TV. Just things like that. I mean, when you're in that mode, you're getting ready to go to the ring, and you want to get there just due to time constraints for the match. Anybody gets in your way, you just start stiff-arming them. You know, it's you have to. But I'm glad I don't come through the ring, through the crowd now.
That scene in that you just described. Someday someone has got to do a wrestling movie and do like a spoof of your character. Who does that all the time?
Just try to throw people around, yeah.
Or just like, you know, like it's supposed to go left, goes right, you know, or something.
And fall, yeah. It wouldn't be much of a spoof. It'd be me. It happened more than once, but that's the one I really remember.
I want to make a quick mention that this is when we do these trivia questions, we either get no response or we get answers within like a minute. So anyway, 2 correct answers already. Andrew Wallace of Essex, UK, and Daryl Scully of Auckland, New Zealand. They got the question. The first Hogan-Ric Flair match was held in Dayton, Ohio. So
I did not know that.
Yeah, the first advertised match was in Oakland, California, but they actually did a match that was unadvertised in Dayton as a dark match at a TV taping, like 3 or 4 days earlier.
Wow.
Let's head to Vincent in New Jersey. Vince, you're up with Edge.
Hi, Dave. How you doing? Hey, how you doing?
Hey, Vince, how you doing?
You've been a fan for a while, and I was wondering. Well, me and my friends, we always talk like, oh, Edge and Christian and the Hardy Boys, and these guys are going to go have great singles careers. And you think now with the mic skills that you have and that whole new attitude, that you will be a singles wrestler faster than any of the three of them?
Dave, can you translate? I missed all of that.
Okay, he was just wondering if you thought that you were going to be you were going to be broken, of you and the two Hardy brothers and Christian, if you thought you would be broken into a singles wrestler quicker than the other three because of your mic skills.
I think Christian has mic skills too, so I don't think it would be because of mic skills. And the Hardys will too once they get a chance to develop them. I mean, when we first started doing them, we were just nervous. And the four of us have never had an opportunity to do promos before. These ones you're seeing of Christian, that Christian and I are doing, these are the first ones we've done, and we're having to do them in front of a nationwide audience. But we wanted to do them, and I hope that we're doing an okay job. But I don't think so. I don't think that'll break me apart from the other three quicker, but I think the Hardy Boys are definitely a team. When people think of the Hardy Boys, they think of the Hardy Boys. They don't think of Matt or Jeff Hardy so much, I don't think. And I think they'll be a team for a while, whereas who knows with Christian and I, it's been rumored we'll break up, we'll be together, we'll break up, we'll be together. I think we're more that's a tough question. But, I mean, they even look like a team, whereas Christian and I have always tried to keep our own identity. And I think in the back of our minds, it's always because eventually we know we're going to go singles. And who excels further past that, who knows?
Okay. Can I ask one more question? Is that how the first comedy you did, I guess you did, if that's the word for it, were you guys like having stage fright by any chance? Or?
Oh, but for the first time you started doing this gimmick, were you scared about for the first time you started in this thing?
I mean, the first time that you try to, it's like my first match on Raw. You try not to think about how many people are at home watching, and I was a little bit nervous, yeah. But once I started rolling, I just thought about everything and just wanted to get my point across and get a little bit of my character and try and be, just forge a new path for the character of Edge. And now, I still get a little bit of butterflies. I don't get butterflies about wrestling matches now. I get butterflies about my promos. Because I want them to be entertaining and hopefully people will react the same way as I do, as I'm thinking of them along with, the other guys. But that's when I get a little bit nervous when matches don't do it anymore.
Okay, thanks a lot, Edge.
No problem.
Okay, before we hit a break, I want to mention, I got a couple of emails here. This is from Chris Viola, who says, your first pay-per-view was SummerSlam 98, and you teamed with Sable. It kind of came out of the blue, was never explained, and never went anywhere. And he was just going like, were you supposed to be, I mean, how did that come about? And at the time, did you think it was going to be a long-term thing, or was it just something that came and went?
I think it was just something that came and went. I think maybe at some point it was, talked about that we'd be together, but it was just right place at the right time. I just started. No one knew who the partner would be, and I guess it just seemed like the right thing to do. Although what made it hard that night was, I think that night Sean and her danced in the ring or something to that effect, so everyone was hoping it would be Sean. But I think it was a pretty entertaining match, and I had fun doing it. I got one under my belt and could move on from there. But, yeah, it was just one of those things that happen a lot in wrestling. You do it once, and that's it.
When you first were introduced, I sensed it as sort of a Ravenish character, with the original vignettes. By the way, someone asked, where were those vignettes originally filmed?
They were actually all filmed in New York City, between, Brooklyn and the Bronx and all over the place. And they were a lot of fun. And at that point, no one really knew what Edge was. It was just Edge. He's this, originally it was supposed to be like a 90s modern-day Jim Morrison, which I never really felt comfortable with because, what was I supposed to be, like this guy that walked down the ramp in a drug-induced haze? I didn't know what it was, where to go with it. And I think it shows in my first few matches. I didn't know what to do, and like I've said before, the Brood really helped with that. It kind of made me feel comfortable. I was with two guys that I enjoyed working with, and we were all just having fun. And once I started having fun and not being stressed out about what I should do in between moves, how I should react to the crowd, things like that, it made it a lot more easy and comfortable.
And this is from Chris Hussein, who wants to know where you and Christian went to school in Toronto.
Actually, we went to Orangeville District Secondary School. That was our high school, and then we went to Humber College together, too. We actually ended up living in a place with our three other best friends, and we all went to the same college. So we went to, like I said before, Princess Elizabeth Public School, from there ODSS, from there to Humber College.
And also, this is asking, how was doing the movie or the TV show Highlander when you were in the
It was actually the movie, the fourth movie in the series, and it was a lot of fun. You know, I mentioned before about acting being a little bit more tedious than I thought it was, and it was a lot more monotonous. And so many wrestling, it's 1 2 takes, you're done, and in front of the crowd, it's definitely one take. But in comparison, all of a sudden, it takes 14 hours. So when you're used to things snapping off really quickly and this taking, forever, it was
Oh, we're losing him. Okay, he's on his, I guess his cell phone's going down.
Maybe he went through a tunnel.
Yeah, maybe. Anyway, until we get him back, I guess, we should probably hit some phone calls. Let's get to Liam in Boston until we get Edge back.
Hey guys, how's it
Liam,
going?
how you doing?
I'm doing all right. Yourself?
Doing really good.
Good. I actually had a question for Adam, but I was going to ask you, what do you guys...
He's on. So don't worry about that.
Adam, how's it going?
We've got Liam from Boston on it.
Okay.
I was just wondering if there was a reason that they switched his finish from the downward spiral to the spear.
If there's a reason for what? Sorry?
That they switched his finish.
They switched your finish from the downward spiral to the spear.
You know what? The spear's not really my finish per se. I just, it fits well and the people react. And depending on the person who's taking it, I won't use it. So I'd still like to use the spiral, but at the same time, it's one of those moves that it looks like I'm taking just as much punishment as my opponent, and it doesn't get the reaction I've always wanted. So I've been trying to think of something else to use that would, keeping in mind things that I could do to like any opponent, or good reversals if I'm working someone like Rock or someone like a Stone Cold or a Helmsley. Good reversals in and out of moves that will take the fans on a nice little ride. And I thought the spiral would do that. When I first thought of it, of using it, I thought of reversals with Shawn Michaels' Sweet Chin Music, or with the Stunner, or with the Rock Bottom. But it just maybe I didn't use it enough for it to catch on, but I'm just not sure it looks good enough, to be honest. So the spear was just kind of one of those things that I started doing when I was shooting Gangrel, because it had intensity, and our feud was our angle was intense, and it just kind of stuck from there because people started reacting, and you kind of go with what works. But if anyone has any ideas, feel free to tell me.
Brian, you got any good hold ideas?
The Blue Thunder. Steal it from Val.
See, I have to think of something that I could do to a guy that's the size of, Rikishi, too. So that's the hard part.
I just had one last question. What do you guys think is the best tag team finish of all time? I guess this relates to Adam somewhat.
You know what?
They don't have one.
This is a strange one, because Bubba, Matt Hardy, and I were talking about this the other day, like 2 days ago, what we thought was the best tag team finisher of all time, and we said the 3D has to be up there. I think Event Omega, as the Hardys call it, the splash leg drop is a cool one, but one that always sticks out on my mind is the Heart Attack clothesline. The Hart Foundation, it was simple but effective, and I tried to think of one for the Rockers. Being such a great team, they never had any good finishing moves, and I hope Christian and I don't go down as one of those teams, because we use the Stackplex, which is the suplex off the shoulder, superplex off the shoulders, which is pretty impressive looking, but we don't use it, every match, so therefore it's not considered a finish. And now that we're heels, it's like, okay, well, we use the bell. Being a heel, you don't get too many straight finishes over guys, so you use gimmicks here and there to get yourself over as a heel. So now, team move wise, I mean, we have all kinds we could use, but it just doesn't really fit right now. Other tag team finishers that I like, I mean, the Legion of the Doomsday device was insane.
Yeah.
So I think those would have to be, the top ones that I can think of.
Yeah, I think the 3D has to be the best. The Midnight Express had some good ones.
The Midnight Express had great double team moves, but their finish was usually just Bobby Eaton. Like a TV squash finish was usually Bobby Eaton's leg drop or Dennis Condrey doing kind of a reverse Russian leg sweep.
Well, with Stan Lane, they called it the Vegematic, I think, where Lane held him for the leg drop.
Yeah, the low bear hug with the leg drop. That was a good one, too, which Too Cool uses. They call it the hip-hop drop now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, another good one was Power and Glory, the Superplex Splash.
I was just going to say that. I was just going to say Power and Glory.
To be honest, Christian and I talked about biting that and possibly having that as our new finish. So who knows? Maybe you could see it.
You know what I liked when it first came? I mean, I thought this was the most awesome thing I ever saw was, and now it's actually done, I wouldn't say routinely, but where, the Bulldogs, when, like, Davey Boy would have somebody up on his shoulders, and then Dynamite would do the top rope drop kick.
Yeah, and he'd jump off of the guy's back.
No, that was another one where.
Okay. You're talking if he has him in an electric chair and Dynamite does a drop kick. Actually,
Yeah.
Yeah, I gotcha. We were actually going to do that in one of our matches with the Hardys, but never got around to it because of time, that's kind of strange. We talked about doing that, so who knows? Maybe we crack that one out too.
Yeah. But I like that the superplex thing. I mean, because. I saw, somebody did this. I just saw a picture of this. I don't remember which company this would be. I think it was a Japanese picture where there were two guys. I'm not sure. I just saw it within the last 2 weeks where, it was like a guy on a shoulder, and then there was a second guy, and they did the superplex, which was really, like, scary.
I gotcha. Wow.
Yeah.
Yikes. That's a lot on the lower guy. I don't know if I could hold all that weight.
I know.
But it's hard enough with that one as it is. But, yeah, it's amazing with some of those Japanese magazines. You see those pictures, and you're like, what are they doing?
Yeah.
You don't a lot of the time you see it, and you don't understand what's happened just because of the sequence and everything. But some good ideas over there.
Yeah. There's probably some, like, unbelievable stuff in Mexico, too. But most...
On the shoulders, like a diving Hurricanrana.
Yeah.
Throwing up. You know what I used to love was when they throw the guy, like you run across and the partner, like, throws you and you do the Hurricanrana off of it. Or I've even seen, like, a monkey flip into a Hurricanrana. I mean, that's not something that you guys would do, but where your partner. Yeah, with Ray Jr. and Conan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That'd be cool, too. I mean, it's possible. It just depends on if a lot of guys. I'm real leery on doing Hurricanranas now, just because not everyone seems to know how to take them properly. You got a bunch of guys that can, but there's a lot of guys who can't. So what you have to do, and this was the hardest part, is do moves that everyone can do. And it can make for it waters down your repertoire a little bit, but you kind of have to. And because once you start doing those certain moves that everyone can take or do, people expect to see them. And that's one thing I think that why we enjoy wrestling the Hardys, because we can take anything they do and vice versa. That's why we'll take a few more risks when we're working those guys.
Anything else, Liam?
No, just tell me Joe C isn't coming back for revenge.
I was tired of him. How quick? The second time he was on? I don't know. I mean, you might have liked him, but that was just like, that one I didn't like.
All right, thanks a lot, guys.
Take it easy.
I had a question about the last pay-per-view. In your match, there was a very strange finish.
Oh, yeah. What was the deal?
That wasn't the finish. Whose fault it was, I don't know, but Kurt was going to break that pin up. I couldn't see him. I was watching Teddy. Teddy was counting. I was like, if I don't kick out here, then this is going to be the finish. So whether I kicked out before the 3 is up for debate. Who knows? It was, I mean, within a hair either way. But Kurt was going to make the save, and then we're going to go into a different finish from there. We just wanted a good false finish, which it would have been, which I still kicked myself over. Mind you, to be honest, you know, it wasn't really anybody's fault. It was just, you know, some thought Kurt was there a little bit late. Some thought Teddy, you know, shouldn't have counted all the way through. Or, you know, in either case, I wasn't supposed to kick out. It was supposed to be a save. So I just kind of tried to kick to save it as a false finish and go to the finish from there. But, I mean, it still worked. You know, the crowd counted along, which if they're doing that, that means you've done your job. So.
Let's go to Joe. Let's go to Joe in Philadelphia. Joe, you're up with Edge.
How you guys doing?
Good.
I was just 2 things. First was how did it feel to be in the match with Rock, since he's like the man, and like was there more of a significance? And also, Kurt Angle's my pick for King of the Ring because like Jericho doesn't need it, and Benoit has the IC belt. What's your thought on the King of the Ring?
Do you have any thoughts about King of the Ring, or do you even, or if you know, you better not tell us.
Do I have any?
Oh, I mean, just any thoughts as far as
any thoughts on King of the Ring?
Yeah, where do you think it should go? Unless you know, and if you know, then don't tell us.
No, are you kidding? I don't know who I'm working in King of the Ring. Who could I could see? You can usually pick a handful of 4 or 5 guys who you can tell are going to go fairly far in the King of the Ring. But then when you think that, they'll throw in a couple of guys just to I think, throw people off and keep people on their toes. This year, geez, I don't know. I would have predicted Benoit before, but now he's got the IC strap, so does he need the King of the Ring? No.
Yeah,
I don't know. I could see. I'm trying to think of someone who could use that little extra push. I couldn't tell you. I honestly don't know. Your guess is as good as mine on that one.
How about the match with The Rock? How do you think about that?
I was really happy with that. You know, we got comments that we picked it up a notch for that match, and looking back, I think maybe we did. You know, we bumped a little faster, a little more crisp. We kind of got into the role of being a heel a little bit more than before, and I think that's when you're working the top face in the industry. You kind of get yourself a little bit more jacked up to make sure that you're feeding well and everything like that. And you know, looking back at it, I was really happy with it and happy with the way it turned out.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Okay.
Take it easy.
I was going to ask you, like, when you first got in, so you got into the WWF originally, I guess, late '97.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, was there a point? Did you see what happened in the WWF as far as, you know, it just taking off to this level? Did you see it before it actually happened, like, or when it happened, were you kind of like, wow, how did we ever get here?
I kind of had my foot in the door as it was starting to happen, and then just lucked into being in the right place at the right time as it exploded. And to me, I could see it happening when Stone Cold was in the studio throwing things around, and him and Bret were going into that feud. That's when I started to see something special, pretty special happening. And then shortly thereafter, I was in the company and watching it, you know, sitting there watching it. So. I think, you know, people have said it before, but I think that with the whole Stone Cold Bret thing, it started to really explode.
You know, I thought that one of the real, you know, things about that whole feud, what made it so unique, was the coincidence that they had so many Canadian television tapings. And it really, I just seem to feel the Canadian television tapings built the heat so much because they go back, you know, like they do a Halifax show or something, and they were so pro Bret Hart that when they got to Pittsburgh or Cleveland the next week for Raw, the people were just like twice as mad because of what they had just watched on TV.
Yeah, I was actually at that Halifax taping, and I that's one of the loudest crowds I've ever heard in my life. It, coupled with the fact that we rarely go to Halifax, but also, I mean, it stirred up emotions in Canada because we're always considered, you know, the second United States and things like that. So when it's being addressed on TV by a guy who is an icon in Canada, it really starts stirring emotions, and it was you know, those Canadian TV tapings were insane, crowd reaction-wise, which is strange from Canada because a lot of times you find Canadian crowds, you know, have a reputation of being a little bit more polite and sitting on their hands a little bit more than the American crowds.
Really? You know, because
or maybe it's just, you know, for instance, in the Sky Dome, they're a good crowd, but because it's so big, the sound goes straight up. So that tends to affect the crowd reaction a lot of times too. But when you compare, there's certain cities that never react well. New Haven, they don't react. Anaheim can be that way sometimes. Cities that we go to a lot besides New York seem to react that way. Long Island's another one where in Nassau they just sit there, and sometimes Canadian crowds can be that way, like Ottawa, and Montreal's usually pretty good. Toronto's usually pretty good, but actually Vancouver is too. It all depends, I guess.
Did you ever wrestle in the Calgary area, or did you just never get there?
No, but before the WWF, I never actually wrestled there. I went out to train at Brett's there, so I was there on 2 separate occasions to do some training at his place, so he could see what I was up to, and that was kind of the first steps into getting to the WWF.
Now, which group did you work for when you went to Japan?
It was called Tokyo Pro. It was an independent. And, we went over there for a couple of tours and had a lot of fun. You know, it was an experience. And, it was good to get in with guys who can't speak English and just go. So that was different for us at the time, too, and especially the different crowds, you know, how they applaud as opposed to cheer. That was a little strange for us at first, but it was fun.
I have a quick question real quick.
Okay, go ahead.
What was it like when Michaels came back like 3 weeks ago? Because I know some of the older guys, I guess aren't people that are that old, but, I mean, some of the guys who were there when he was there kind of had a little bit of heat with him. But, I mean, as far as like a lot of the younger guys are just getting in, they just have to see him as like this legend.
Yeah, well, I mean, Sean was still around when I first was getting in, and he was never anything but nice to me, and always with advice and things like that. And I think he can kind of see guys who have tailored their style after him. I don't see any problems. But mind you, I'm one of those guys that just kind of does my thing, says hi to everybody, tries to get along with everybody, and just go out and have fun, because when you don't have fun in there, that's when you start to get miserable. I mean, if you're having fun, how many people can say they enjoy what they do for a living? And I do, so.
I guess on that note, we should probably wrap that up. I want to thank you very much. This was a really fun show, and we really enjoyed it.
I had a good time.
Yeah, I did too, and we all did. And I also
want to on my cell phone.
Oh, no problem. We're going to have Tom Zink tomorrow, and we're also going to have his Edge's tag team partner Christian on Friday, and hopefully that will also be a really good show. I know I'm expecting tomorrow to be a really fun show with Tom Zink as well. And just want to say goodbye to everybody, and we'll see you tomorrow at 6.